Hello, this is a video of two Bechstein grand pianos that have just come into stock. This is a Model B from 1911 and this is a Model 5, that's an old Roman V, from 1894. Very similar quality pianos. Both of them we bought in with the possibility of full restoration, but we have a shortage of sort of grand pianos like this which are less expensive. So I'm just looking to see if there's any way we can recondition rather than fully restore these pianos. Now, first of all, this is the walnut piano, which is very interesting because on this age of Bechstein, you very, very rarely find walnut. Other makes of piano do walnut, but Bechstein very rarely do walnut on this. There's nearly always rosewood, possibility of black, and the music desk has been changed here. This was owned by a musician who is now very elderly, and the piano needs to be sold. Let's have a look on the inside. It has been restored by somebody, and the restoration is reasonably well done. It's done in the UK, and don't know all the details of it. It's done some time ago. The string colour tells you some idea, this bass string colour, of how long ago it might have been done. Perhaps in the 1950s, but that's only hazarding a guess. Now the other Bechstein, this is now 1911 Model B. It's very similar. They're both 2 meters long, by the way. This one hasn't been restored, I don't think at all. So it's in original condition, and a couple of the strings have previously been broken here. So we've pitch raised the piano just to see if any of the strings break, because when a couple are broken, that's obviously a reason that you're going to fully restore the piano if the strings are starting to break. Now this piano is almost a semitone flat, which is amazingly flat. It's obviously not been tuned for ages and ages. That's usually the reason it's so flat. And the bass still sounds, as you'd expect on a Bechstein, very pleasant. If you restrung this piano, then it would be certainly stronger. We'll show you one that we fully restored. Before we do that, when there are strings broken like this, then it's a sure sign you're likely to break others. And indeed, when it was pitch raised, one did break. We do lubricate here and then take the strings back down before we bring them up, and that minimises the likelihood of breaking. But this one did break, and you can see that we've actually, it's better than replacing the string is to make, to tie it together there. So that's commonly done and is not that difficult, not that simple to do. You need a bit of a skill. Sometimes they'll break and you can't do it and you have to replace them anyway. But rather than replacing the string, where it's difficult to get a good match, that is a good match actually, and that's a good match, but not easy to do. Better to keep the same string, which also matches in perfectly. Doesn't need stretching or anything either, so it's already going to stay in tune. And normally these are successful. Say not always. You have to be careful where you do the splice, because if it's in the middle here, it rips the felt obviously, and also may not work because the ends might be digging in too much. But that's been a successful splice, and the tuning, the rest plank here looks in pretty good condition. The key here is very much whether the tuning pins are going to be tight or not, and I've tested them and they are tight enough for us to sell the piano without full restoration. But this was very much brought in as a candidate for full restoration. As I say, don't have enough pianos in the lower price range, that's the problem. And it's a pleasant sound, as you'd expect from a Bechstein. We'll show you a fully restored one now. Now here's a fully restored Model 5 of the age of the walnut one. And as you can see, it looks like a new piano throughout. There's plenty of videos about these that we've done, several of these pianos, probably about 15 of them I think altogether, so it's something we commonly do. So certainly bought both the pianos in with the possibility of full restoration, but obviously it makes the piano quite expensive. We've changed the rest plank. Look at the other videos. I'll try and put a link to see all the work that's been done on this one. Now back to the walnut Bechstein. Very encouraged by this because we very rarely get walnut Bechsteins. As I say, there are other pianos do walnut, but walnut, a Blüthner or Bechstein don't tend to do them. So of the top makes, neither does Steinway. So it's very rare that of an 1894 piano you're going to get walnut. Though if it's some firms like Caps regularly did them, but as I say, for the these top make for pianos that we normally like to source, you don't get worn up. So there's a lot of potential here. A lot of these pianos are redone in black unless the veneer is particularly special. Of course, this veneer is very special, so we're unlikely to want to redo this one in black. If you're interested in the piano, want it fully restored, let us know, because we can either French polish this, which we'd like to do normally. A lot of firms polyester them, which is like the black finish. But the problem with that is if it is done in polyester, and then if the front part of the lid is put back here, let's just show you what I mean. That this is folded back as it usually is when it's being played. And then if that stays a long time like that, this fades and the underneath doesn't fade, and you have a huge fade line. You can just about see us. No, you can't really see one on this one, but you do get fade lines on pianos. We've seen many, shown many videos with those on. So that's an issue, really. If you do have a polyester piano, or in fact any French polished piano, have the lid down sometimes, have it up sometimes, vary it so that it fades evenly. But this is wonderful veneer. So if you're staying on the walnut Bechstein, you can see some of the letters. This is rare that these letters come out. So we're having to think about what we can do if we're going to keep the veneer. I think very often this is modernised and put in and I'll show you the other one that's modernised. So this is the same age of piano. That would have had the old logo on, and this has been made to look like a modern Bechstein. That's commonly done when it's done in black. Just the norm, really, and the music stand, that's the common style of music stand that's done, but the walnut one would have had a different style of music stand. Yeah, this is a restored mahogany, rosewood Bechstein that we've got in stock. I haven't made a video of this yet, but wonderful piano, and that's one possible style of music stand that the walnut one had. I don't think it probably was that style. I'll try and see if I can attach an image of a style that it would have had. We'll look at this piano later on, but it's an excellent piano. So at the moment the walnut one has got a replacement music stand here, so obviously that can be replaced, and it'll be difficult to get a walnut one done, but we will be able to do that, and obviously that will look in keeping with the piano then. As I say, I'm looking for some pianos that we don't fully restore but just recondition. Tightness of tuning pins is number one, or one of the main things, because obviously if the tuning pins are tight, then there's the option for us to not to just recondition the piano. And these are very, very tight, and none of the strings are broken. I'm confident this is 10 beats below pitch roughly, so a long way below pitch. There's one string here that looks as though it's probably been replaced, but it's a good match, I think. A pretty good match anyway. And the bass is good. It has been restrung, so there's a new strings from what they were originally anyway. And the tone of the piano is promising, but the hammers are very worn, as we'll see in a minute. You can see by the patch, by the way, on the soundboard that has been reconditioned, because they've masked around the original badge. That's not something we do. We take the badge off and then replace it normally with a copy, so which looks better, I think. The finish on this frame isn't quite what we'd like to do either. But the main thing is whether the piano itself is functioning well and has a good tone. Then we can recondition it instead of fully restore it. And the black one, also, they're tight enough for us to recondition rather than fully restore. And we've pitch raised this, and it's at concert now. It has a very, very good tone actually. But again, the hammers are a bit worn. We'll have a look at hammers on both pianos. By the way, the logo on this black one as well of the Bechstein isn't what I'd expect. It's much smaller than you'd normally get. If you saw the other one we showed you a minute ago, it's larger. And this age of Bechstein, that's rather small. Maybe it was original. I can't see why it would have been changed, because I think the fall is all original. It's unlikely to have been changed, but all sorts of things do happen to pianos. You can see the fingernail wearing there, and the keys, ivory keys, this one's been badly stuck back on. We can certainly improve that. So I'm trying to think this through, as you can see, and hopefully we will get the possibility of both of these pianos just being reconditioned. Pedals are really low, which is encouraging. I've mentioned before, and we had someone tall come in earlier, so they put the caster cups under, and then there's plenty of leg room then for a tall person. because sorry, I hope you got that. The pedals are very low. I've mentioned this on about other Bechsteins, and therefore it can be raised up, and the pedals are not going to be too high for the caster cups. Now, as we've shown before, but briefly, this has still got the rocker style action in, which is something if we fully restore we'll replace. But there's nothing wrong with the rocker style. It's just a bit of a nuisance to try and regulate it if you're a technician. So you'll often find they haven't been regulated because of that, because the new style, which is on all pianos, is much simpler. So I meant the new style on all modern pianos. And Bechstein's after about 1923 or 4, I'm not sure exact date, that they changed to this style, which is, you can see whether these holes have been plugged, and now we've got the normal capstan action, which is much easier for technicians to work on. As I say, not an improvement in terms of touch necessarily, but just much more user-friendly for the piano technician. So back to the walnut Bechstein. Sorry if you're confusing you flitting from one to the other, but there's the old rocker system on this, exactly the same as the so this is 1894. The one we just looked at, which has had it changed, is 1896, and typical Bechstein rocker system, which, as I say, is not so convenient to work on, but doesn't really matter in terms of touch. It's they had reasons for doing it. The idea is that it gets pulled, the keys gets pulled down quicker for better repetition, and also there's less friction points. Which, as I say, nowadays it's been abandoned anyway, that system. So looking inside the walnut at the action, we can see that the hammers have had quite a lot of wear since they've been replaced, and they have been replaced. And you can see they're starting to get rather flat, which makes it very mellow sounding. Now, of course, if we fully restored the piano, we put new hammers, shanks and rollers on, and you can see that on plenty of other videos, so I don't think I'll go back and show that on the other Bechstein that we've done. But the hammers, this hammer shank, and also the hinge here, so it makes all of these hinges tight. They're beginning to start, well, they're not getting loose on this one very much yet, but the hinges normally get loose here, and then the roller here, that gets flat. These have been replaced, and that's not too much of a problem. You might have noticed I've got two hammers slightly higher. Those are ones I've regulated, and you can see that we'll look in the piano because they were very far out of regulation and certainly affect the touch hugely. So hopefully I'm going to be able to try and show you how the touch has been changed here. So middle C, this is middle C and B together. You see how middle C is coming much nearer the string before it sets off, much nearer the string. This is C and D, C on the left, D on the right, of course. So the C is getting much higher up, starting off higher up as well, because it's the hammer blow distance was completely wrong. So if we try and play quietly, this is C and C sharp, both being regulated. And I'm just going to play the same touch on the next two. And really they're hardly reaching. Had to push harder to get the same volume. So obviously for gentle playing it's much more difficult before they're regulated. Now, I'm amazed that this piano was left like that for so long, because it was being played on by a musician, obviously getting elderly, but would have been much nicer to have played on a well-regulated piano. Now the B is much better regulated already, so we don't have to do just some fine regulation on this one. Now, a brief look at the inside of the B, and well, the hammers are worn similarly to the old Model V as well, old Model 5. Hammers, shanks and rollers haven't been changed, so there are some loose hinges on this one. So if you wobble the hammer from side to side, then there's a slight play in the hinges. So that's obviously going to mean the hammer wears faster. So that's something we would do. If we recondition it, we would do that. We'd voice the hammers as well. So we do quite a lot of work reconditioning it, but as I say, we bought these as candidates for full restoration as well. But we do have so many that we're either still restoring or on the showroom floor. We've got 3 Bechsteins that are fully restored. So they're at a very good price at the moment because we've got 3 of them. So that tends to bring the price down. If we've only got 1, it tends to be more expensive. So I hope that's been useful. I'm going to play the pianos briefly to you, but this is before they've been reconditioned or restored. So that's 2 Bechstein Grands that have come into stock, same length, 2 meters each. This is the black one. And as I say, I'm trying to see if we can just recondition rather than fully restore. The case is quite the worst for wear on this one. So another possibility is, if you want to try out a grand piano, you can rent these very inexpensively. Please look at our stock list on the website to see what sort of price I'm talking about. And then of course, if you rent for 10 months, as you see on our rental schemes, 10 months rental, and you will pay 10 months up front, and then all that rental can be taken off this or any other piano. It does have a beautiful tone. It'll have even better tone once we've reconditioned the hammers and such, and the touch evened it up a bit. But touch and tone are already good. As I say, cosmetically it's not too good at all. So let's have a look at the walnut one in comparison. So the walnut one, the touch immediately is very much needing regulation. Well, we find once it's finished. At the moment it's very, very choppy feeling, and you can't get a nice pianissimo, as we showed on these notes here. That is very uncontrollable compared to that, and even that's not quite as refined as we want it to be. You can hear the potential tone. The tone isn't bad, it's that the hammers really need reconditioning as well to get the tone back to something that it would be if we fully restored it. Now, both pianos can be fully restored. What's really interesting about this is it's a walnut veneer, which is very, very, very unusual. I did some research to see if I could find anywhere of this age, this is 1894, in walnut veneer. Now, we sold many pianos of this age before, and wonderful restoration jobs they make as well. They do restore very well, in other words, and can really recommend it fully restored. Or if you want again to try it recondition, maybe rent it again for a 10-month period, or just buy it cheaply and then have it fully restored later on. That's certainly possible. Thank you very much for listening.